what I was saying is hopefully there's not going to be a repeat of the complete car crash that we got in February. Both sides, I think, very anxious, understandably, to avoid that. What will be very interesting, though, is really to see what Volodymyr Zelensky has to say to Donald Trump face-to-face, coming away from that meeting on Friday with Vladimir Putin. Now, lots of people saying that Donald Trump didn't get what he was setting out for, which, of course, he had said very publicly was an immediate cessation of violence, a ceasefire, while they could then get into the substantive negotiations. He didn't get that. He seems to have backtracked from that initial demand of Vladimir Putin. I know that, you know, from the Ukrainians' point of view, what they've said very publicly as well as, yes, they want a ceasefire because they want to stop a repetition of what we got again just last night, where we had multiple missiles and drones coming across the border from Russia that killed 10 people, including an 18-month-old child, and injured dozens more. That is a nightly occurrence in Ukraine. They've had 3.5 years of this. They are war-weary, understandably. They would like to see a ceasefire and then get into the negotiations about, yes, they acknowledge it's probably going to have to be, there are going to have to be some tough and unpalatable decisions made about what land they're willing to cede to Russia at the end of the day. But they don't want to do that while war is still raging within Ukraine.
So just for the viewers, if you're listening on the radio, what we're seeing now is actually live pictures outside of the White House. And we've already had, entering into the White House, you've had leaders of the likes of EU, Keir Starmer, of course, France, Germany, NATO. Those guys are already inside that building. We're currently waiting on, I think it's the final attendee now, Zelensky. Was he supposed to be there by now? Is he running late? What's going on?
No, he was supposed to be there about now. So I think this is all running to schedule. We've had all of the European Commission and NATO leaders in there now. So just waiting for Volodymyr Zelensky. You'll have Donald Trump will come out, no doubt, onto the steps of the White House to welcome him. We're told after the fuss that was made the last time about the fact that Volodymyr Zelensky was wearing his khakis and not a suit, which many people within the Trump administration found quite disrespectful, that this time around he will wear a suit, or at least a dark kind of suit jacket. Let's see what he's wearing when he comes out. The thing, you know, from Volodymyr Zelensky is, it's his shtick, isn't it? He wants to portray himself around the world as a wartime leader, which he absolutely is. He doesn't want people around the globe to forget what his nation is enduring on a daily basis and trying to fight against Russia.
The fellow was doing photo shoots, was he not?
He was what?
Wasn't he doing photo shoots in Vogue? Was it Vogue, Zelensky? I'm sure he was, ladies and gents. You guys have got eagle eyes at home. You can correct me.
Wearing his khakis.
Yeah, I've always found this whole style and Zelensky situation a little bit odd. It raises my eyebrows, I've got to tell you.
Okay,
anyway.
well, you may have a point, but I would just ask you to cast your mind back quite a few decades now to the Second World War, and I think you'll find that Winston Churchill used to also
everyone gives me that pushback. I've had all these pictures sent to me because the last time when he went to the White House, because you say it's just the Trump administration that thinks it was quite disrespectful, I thought it was quite disrespectful actually, and I was whining about it at the time on my programme, and I was inundated with pictures of the likes of Churchill on this lawn and that lawn and all the rest of it. It still didn't change my view though.
Do you want to save a boatload of cash this summer, wherever you have a trip planned? The one thing you're going to need is access to the internet and on the go. And you can do that easily with Saily. Hit the link in the description to get 15% off your first eSIM plan ready for your trip so you can browse to your heart's content. Saily gets you a local SIM card you can use when traveling so you don't have to pay those crazy roaming fees just to send a message or check the latest news. Now, they've got plans in over 160 countries, 8 regions, so pretty much everywhere, wherever you're going, they'll be able to make sure you're connected. So how does it work? All you've got to do is this. Hit the link in the description to download the app. It will work on iOS or Android. Buy a plan. You can choose an amount of data and time frame that suits you best. And then just install the eSIM on your phone. When you land at your holiday destination, you can activate your plan instantly. And if that wasn't enough, Saley eSIMs only ever have to be installed once. So when you go on your next trip, you just buy a plan for a new country, turn that eSIM back on, and boom, you're back watching me on GB News. I'll be using a Saley SIM on my next holiday because it's actually faster than some of the hotel Wi-Fis. You can get unlimited data if you want, so you can scroll away to your heart's content. And when you leave the hotel, you don't have to do that annoying thing of Wi-Fi hopping because you've got constant connectivity wherever you go. And they've got 24/7 support as well and a full refund policy if your eSIM isn't compatible. So get sorted for your next trip. Download Saley using the link in the description below. And if you use the code NEWS at checkout, you'll get an exclusive 15% discount on us. So click the link, download Saley, and use the code NEWS at checkout.
In the scheme of things, I think it's the least important issue to get.
I don't know, I think it does actually send quite an interesting message, and I think it gives quite an interesting insight into what Zelensky's positioning is, because many people, you say you found it quite uncomfortable watching that exchange last time. I found it fascinating. And I thought that Zelensky completely overplayed his hand. I think he was really caught on the hop. He's used to being lauded and applauded, whether that's crashing into music festival screens or parliament screens or wherever it is. And I think for the first time, he got quite a shock that he really wasn't expecting. So whilst it might seem a small thing, what's he got on, what's he wearing clothes-wise, for me, I found it quite indicative of what the potential outcome will be in these conversations. On
that issue, I will agree with you in terms of the way in which things played out. And actually, it was very ill-judged on his part, the fact that, when you're dealing with Trump, you just need to take the blows. When you come away from the Oval Office, you can get your own messaging out. And he clearly nipped back, because you're right, he is used to being feted around the world as this wartime leader who has stood up to the aggression of Russia and will stay in his country to prosecute that fight alongside his troops. And he has, of course, enjoyed a very large degree of celebrity. Maybe he has believed to an extent in his own publicity, but I think lessons have been learned there. On the dress issue, you may see it as being a bit disrespectful to Trump. You can argue that point, but I would just say it's disrespectful to every world leader because that's what he wears.
He does. So tell us then, who's going to be in this meeting? I think actually we've got some movement on the screen. Let's just see this, whether or not it is indeed Zelensky. Who's going to be taking part in this meeting? Are those leaders going to be there, the likes of Macron and all the rest of it? Or is it going to be...
It will be Volodymyr Zelensky, President Trump and Vice President Vance, and you can see Donald Trump there, as suggested, out greeting Volodymyr Zelensky, and I'm just looking at his attire.
Get out of the way, car.
It's a bit dark, that
It is.
image.
I want to see what he's wearing.
I think my bet of a dark suit jacket is probably not far off the mark there.
Well, there you go. It looks like he's made a bit of an effort. Some of you will say, Michelle, don't be so trivial. What does it matter what he's wearing? But some people might have a completely different view. So anyway, I rudely interrupted you as telling us who's going to be in the meeting. Well,
just basically the president, the vice president, Volodymyr Zelensky, maybe one of his closest aides, I'm not quite sure. Who won't be in the meeting are any of the European leaders who've gone all the way across to the US. But for them, they say the trip there is really about trying to show Volodymyr Zelensky that they have his back, that they are full square behind him in his efforts to do the right thing for his people. And if he decides at the end of the day that whatever the deal or the messaging that has come back from Vladimir Putin is, that that's just not the road he wants to go down, the European leaders will still have his back and the Ukrainian people's back going forward. And that's going to be a big ask. Well, yeah, it is. And just before I bring my panel in, let me just ask you about this, because you're quite right. Donald Trump was saying that the Europeans will need to step up, led by Britain. There was some conversation that actually that could even mean British boots on the ground. What do we know about that? Well, I don't think you'd even be going anywhere near British boots on the ground, because what you would have is America exiting stage left and the European allies of Ukraine having to go in there and substantially upscale the contributions they're making both in monetary terms and in military equipment terms to Ukraine to try and make up the shortfall for that lack of equipment that will come from the US. Now, it's possible that there may still be some US equipment that Ukraine would have to pay for, or I say Ukraine, probably its allies, would have to pay for. But what they then wouldn't have, unless it can be agreed through the United States, is the kind of intelligence that Ukraine absolutely relies on, the day-to-day satellite imagery that helps it with its targeting of Russian troop movements, that helps it defend against Russian missiles and drones coming into Ukraine. So it can be a very difficult process going forward if Ukraine decides that what Russia is proposing is just too unpalatable for it to proceed with. And then what are we into? Are we really into a process where these European allies are going to continue bankrolling the Ukrainian war effort for potentially many years to come?
Zia Youssef, what's your thoughts on Reform UK's position on some of this stuff?
Well, Reform's position is that we support Ukraine's sovereignty robustly. Vladimir Putin is an evil man. I'm going to be clearer about that stuff. But look, ultimately, President Trump is doing his utmost, clearly and evidently, to try to bring an end to this meat grinder war that has cost enormous amount in terms of bloodshed, in terms of infrastructure inside Ukraine, and we applaud that.
But one of the key kind of lines on this one is whether or not Ukraine should be allowed to join NATO. That will be one of the key sticking points. Where's Reform's view on that?
Well, it sounds like, if you look at the latest reporting, that what the Trump administration is trying to do, again, is to make peace. Peace involves compromise. That is the nature of peace. And as painful as whatever compromises that need to be made might be, well, they have to be weighed up against the pain of continuing, as I said, this enormous amount of bloodshed without any compromise. So, look, I think fundamentally what Trump is trying to do is offer some kind of security guarantee. That's some sort of de facto security guarantee without membership of NATO. Let's see whether he's successful in doing that.
Martin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I slightly differ from Zia's view on Donald Trump, because he came into his presidency in January saying he could get a deal done on Ukraine on the first day of his presidency, and I think he's had a pretty harsh collision with reality, because this isn't a conflict that can be done with just the shake of a hand and a kind of business deal like he does in his boardrooms.